So was this a fruitful meditation for some of us? Did we first make the mistake of the wrong observation, which is observation contaminated by ulterior motives? And then from that making of that mistake we learn, and then hopefully we shifted to the motiveless observation, which is always from Shiva. And was there any learning? And was there a sudden change in the way Shakti is functioning because of the observation? And have we picked up the rudimentary skill of this motiveless observation, which the Master Krishnamurti calls choiceless awareness? It's awareness in which there is no choice. Choice is not exercised. You have no preference, you have no likes and dislikes, you're just watching the whole thing as it is happening. So any discoveries? Anybody wants to say something? And when one of us wants to say something, then all the rest of us must be very, very attentive. Because it's like God speaking. Any one person speaking is like God speaking. And so everybody must be very attentive, not thinking, this is not my problem, somebody else is saying something. It should not be like that. Must be extremely attentive.
Para mí fue muy conmovedor, porque fue una época de mi vida muy difícil. Y primero entró la mente como puedo ser el observador, como sin un propósito. Y después dije, bueno, Shiva solo está tranquila y simplemente lo que tenga que observar llegará. Entonces ya no hice nada. Y de repente lo que sentí fue los sentimientos de esa persona en mí y sentí una gran compasión. I will say it in English. At the beginning, I was wondering how to observe and how to do it without a purpose. But then I realized that it was Shiva, and that just being there, doing nothing, it would happen. And all of a sudden it was like being able to feel the feelings that person had for me. And all that person was going through. And in that moment, it had been a very, very time of a lot of suffering. But realizing this, I could feel his feelings, and a lot of compassion came to me.
Oh, great. I'm so happy.
Yo lo que pude observar fue que hace 25 años una persona me hizo mucho daño. Y durante muchos años estuve sufriendo por él. Y nunca había descubierto lo que me hacía falta, sufrir y llorar por mí. Me gustaría que me guiaran cómo continuar el proceso, porque una vez que descubrí eso, tuve sentimientos encontrados. Por un lado sentí la necesidad de sacarlo, y por otro lado sentí paz. ¿Cómo continuar el proceso? de observación para conmigo misma.
I just saw that one person has heard me a lot since 25 years, and for the first time I could see something that it was to take like the opposite view. I could see that I have never felt for myself.
Oh. Okay.
So, but this brings a kind of opposite feeling, and she asked how to continue, how we continue the process of watching, observing, because in one part of her feelings she felt like removing it. I'm not sure if removing him or removing it, the feeling she shares. And in another side, she was feeling tremendous peace. So this creates a kind of opposite feelings inside her. And her question is, how do we continue this process of observing ourselves?
Yeah, that is the whole point. In the beginning, you will always make the mistake of bringing an ugly motivation to that observation. And so the whole observation becomes distorted by the ingredient of the ulterior motive. And therefore, you cannot actually see what is. What is the actual reality which is going on in consciousness. And to see that what is as it is, there should be no motive to change it. Which means you must not have any desire, you must not have any ideal to change it into something better, into something nobler. But just seeing it as it is. And now you can do this when you're cutting vegetables in the kitchen. You can do this when you're just walking on the road. Got to do it all day long. Because this is the road to salvation. So from this will come inner contentment. From inner contentment will come the awakened intelligence, which will then start inquiring, and then it will discover the divine. And then there will be self-realization. And the discovery will be that the divine is actually inside you, it's behind the scenes. And that's the discovery. It's not a thing to even advertise and tell anybody. It's for you, then your whole outlook on life has changed.
Gracias. I found myself, and I observe myself, and I see that I have a lot of Shakti in my life.
Good.
I keep running every day, every minute.
Okay, good. That's the way you're made.
And I also see myself repeating things in my life. And I don't know, if I see them, how can I accept them?
You've got to just accept it because that's the way the divine has architectured. You've got to speak to the divine and say, oh God, is this all there is in life? Isn't there anything better than this? And not ask for something better. Just be there. Yeah, don't ask for something better, just be there. Be there and see what happens.
I found myself in the process when I was able to see some events, painful events in my life with detachment or just observing. But I also found that it was not a process where I learned how not to, being able to separate myself from the ulterior motive. It was depending on the event. And when some events I got right hooked in with the emotion and feeling again within the circle of negative feelings, and that's where I tried to stop and detach myself. But I noticed that I was able to do it with some events, and with some events I was not able to do it.
Okay. You've got to actually give yourself a lot of time to do this. You can't do this with any time restriction. And you've got to do it so naturally while traveling in your car. And because the moment you have a motive that you want to arrive somewhere, you're just finished. You're just off the track. Because then it's the angel trying to reform the demon. And that's not what all this is about. Because that's already going on in the world. Many angels are trying to reform the demons in life. That's the story of conflict.
If it is supposed that only observe and do not change anything, how can I do to do not hurt anybody?
No, consciousness must become whole and integral. Consciousness must become whole and integral. And then consciousness must learn the art and the yogic skill of being quiet and working only when there is a real assignment for it. So otherwise Shakti has to learn the art of resting. She has to learn the art of resting. And only working when there is a genuine assignment, then let her jump and let her do the work. Otherwise, she has to learn to be quiet. And then comes the important question. When the self is completely integrated and when you are at peace with yourself, then it becomes impossible to hurt others. The question doesn't even arise. It won't happen. So, but you've got to first make this whole and make this into one total thing and quiet. Because the quietness is the key. Yeah, Shakti is not connected when Shakti's score is 100. She's connected to Shiva when her score is 0. That's the key. So the whole effort in yoga of India is cessation of thought. So because that's the key. And the moment a thought is excited and then one thought becomes 2 thoughts, that becomes 10 thoughts and so on, then you're moved away from Shiva.
Lo que experimenté en esta meditación, lo voy a decir en español para poder decir más claro. Al principio, cuando puse un motivo, no sé, el motivo de cómo estoy en mi relación actual, la imagen se quedó congelada y pues nada más no se movía. Y en el momento en que quité el motivo, dije solamente voy a observar, las imágenes se fueron moviendo en mi cabeza y me vi cómo me he movido en mis relaciones. Una imagen, otra imagen, otra imagen, otra imagen. Hasta que llegó un momento, hasta que físicamente empecé a sentirme acalorada y otra voz me dijo, tranquila, simplemente es el observa, tranquila, y otra voz me decía, es que ya quiero acabar, ya me quiero mover, ya quiero acabar, y otra vez el tranquilo, tranquila nada más, tranquila, tranquila. Pues fue una experiencia muy colorida.
So she shares that she started with a motive. She says, how is my actual relationship going on? And she said, I went blank, like nothing happened. And suddenly, just I started observing things, and the observing happened, and in that moment, a lot of images started coming, and I started seeing many relationships, how they have been built, and she shares that she starts seeing different things and like how I built the relationships of her, and while watching this, one part of her was like saying, okay, I want to stop this, I want to stop this, and another part of her was saying, calm, just watch, calm. So these two things were going on inside.
And then there was an entity which was watching this, and that is Shiva. And the angel was saying, be calm. And the demon was agitated.
Yes.
Okay, some learning is taking place, that's very good. And this has to be done This has to be done if you are interested in the spiritual path. Self-knowing takes place by doing this. And in place of this, what is present is self-deception. So where there is self-deception, there is no hope for us in the spiritual life. So that's why self-knowing is of the utmost importance. Got to be utterly, utterly honest with ourselves. See things as they are, and then move from there. And then if you stop making the effort, if you stop struggling with yourself, then you'll come to that inner contentment. And that's the most important milestone. And that may be the first and the last step in freedom. First and the last step. And all this can be done only by you actually taking interest, you being serious, you learning all the time. So shall we move on now that we covered some ground, we move on to the next slide. So we saw this, and therefore we've got to, now this is the key to the spiritual life. Now either you can be very extroverted like this lady, she's engrossed in her laptop. The laptop is a sense object, she's seeing pictures there and so on. And then, now what does this picture mean actually? So it's not just sitting with your eyes closed, no, that's not it. But actually the feeling nature, this is the feeling nature, the whole of it. The feeling nature, instead of open to the world of the senses, the feeling nature is open to every going on in consciousness. Is open to it, very receptive to it, keenly listening, keenly watching, but never with a motive to tamper with anything. That's the key. And then, beyond this watching, is the unknown. It's just a huge silence which is there, and you get connected to that silence the moment you become very silent here. And then if you reach that state, then you will feel like being with yourself. Like one devotee was talking to me yesterday. She said, I don't like crowds. Then don't like to be with people unless I'm able to really share something significant. Like to be by myself. Because when you are by yourself, it is so blissful, it is so peaceful. And to abide in that is all that you want in life, nothing else. Because that's peace. And now, even this person who has become very unruffled and very calm and very peaceful, she does not know that in the peaceful condition, she is connected to the divine. She will not know. That's the peculiarity of it. She will know it if she now does research and she studies the scriptures. Following this, will you do this research? Will you do this inquiry? Artist lady? So this is again just the friend or the enemy fragmentation. That if you are watching like what we were doing now and not fighting, like an angel fighting with a demon, then ultimately you come to that wholeness of consciousness, where the whole of consciousness becomes whole and it is peacefully resting. It's peacefully breathing, it's peacefully resting. It's not going into any aberrant vibration. It's so peaceful. It's just breathing very slowly. And in that state, it's connected to the Supreme. And the fragrance of the silence which this consciousness gets when it has turned inward and it has renounced all effort to become somebody, to go somewhere. It's renounced every kind of effort to become somebody, to go somewhere. then in that moment, it receives a fragrance from the Supreme in the form of a silence. And then in that state, you don't like to talk to people. Just silent and you're just walking. Bandhuratma atmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitaha. So when the lower self has been understood and pacified, then the self becomes your friend. Whose friend? The self is Shakti and Shiva is the person. So Shakti becomes Shiva's friend. Otherwise, Shakti is the enemy of Shiva. Anatmanastu shatrutve vartet atmaiva shatruvat. The self is the friend of the self of him by whom the self has been mastered by the self. Follow the language closely. Shiva has mastered the little self. He's gained mastery over it just by being compassionate, by watching, not by interfering, not by manipulating, not by controlling, by watching. With compassionate eyes, just watching. And otherwise, you are at loggerheads. And there is chaos. So this is now clear to you? The two things, how consciousness can either be fragmented and it can be full of quarreling angels and demons, or consciousness can be whole. And now comes the step. Because Krishna said to Arjuna that with practice and detachment, the Shakti will calm down. The restless mind will become very calm with practice and with detachment. Now, what is the detachment he's talking about? The detachment is the renunciation of the wrong effort to become somebody, to go somewhere, to become somebody big. You've got to renounce that effort. That is the detachment. And then once you give up that effort, otherwise, are we all continuously making an effort to struggle and to become somebody bigger and greater? Are we doing that? How sad. Just got to be ourselves. Do the effort when there is a compelling necessity. Otherwise, what is the necessity to struggle and rob the peace in your heart? Because by that struggle, you lost the peace in the heart. So this is another mythic symbol of how when Shakti becomes very, very active, extremely restless, then your awareness is completely buried. It's gone under the ground. So it's not surfacing. Then you'll find these kind of people full of their own idiotic perceptions, their own thoughts, and they're in mental hospital. They are in lunatic asylums. Please understand, this is the state of consciousness, where all awareness has disappeared from life totally. Only a chaotic Shakti is ruling. Now this gap between one thought and another thought, this gap. And that gap is very sacred, because the thread, I said the thread is the sutra. The thread is the sutra. And the thread is the naked form of the Paramatma. It's the naked form of the Paramatma. So he is behind every thought, he is behind the scenes. He is that Shiva. That sutra is that Shiva. Because wherever Shakti is traveling, Shiva is going behind her or not? Is he going behind her? Yes. Yeah, he is. Yeah. So he is the thread. He is the sutra. Every thought, every perception, he's ever there, but he's invisible. He's just behind. And you've got to know that your true nature is you are that sutra. You are that thread. Got to know that. Got to know that very squarely, number of times, so that you don't ever forget it for the rest of your life. It becomes the solid rock on which you stand. So here, the Supreme Soul or God is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita. So the imperceptible inner self